Welcome to Almost HFY channel. This story is about Lissandra the vampire and tainted blood. Like and subscribe to get more stories.
The music shimmered, alien waltz spun through unfamiliar intervals, the crowd blurring at the edges of Sarah's focus. Lissandra led not by force, but by gravity, every movement invited and dared, never demanded. Each touch carried more than contact. When Lissandra's hand traced Sarah's waist, she felt it twice, a shock along her skin and an answering ripple inside her mind. It wasn't invasive, just present, testing, curious. The hunger Sarah sensed wasn't for flesh. It was for closeness, for knowing, for something Sarah could almost name. A cool awareness pressed softly into her mind, tentative, apologetic, as if resting a forehead against hers in silent question. Sarah's heart leapt. She realized she could feel Lissandra's loneliness, old, taut, and painfully careful. The vampire's hand slid higher, pausing beneath Sarah's breast, palm flat to the hammering pulse. Lissandra's fingers never tightened, just listened, as if memorizing the rhythm. Fear flashed in Sarah's chest, quick, thrilling, but underneath bloomed something electric, something reckless and real. She found herself arching just slightly into the touch.
You burn so bright. Do you know that?
The words seemed to slip past Sarah's ears, echoing instead along the inside of her skull, like silk dragged across water. And along with them came a surge of feeling, not hunger, but longing. I want to be near. I want to feel you. Lissandra spun Sarah slow, their bodies brushing, close enough to draw stares. Sarah's breath hitched, the room receding until it was just the two of them, orbiting a secret. Across the floor, two women paused mid-turn, eyes flicking toward the pair. Is she going to eat her? One whispered, half amused, half wary. Her companion, tall, braided, diplomatic, shrugged. They can. But House Noctis feeds on synths since decades. But that one's just playing. Look, she's not resisting. The first woman stared as Lissandra's lips hovered at Sarah's throat. Sarah's fingers clenched, not to push away, but to anchor herself. She smirked, the watcher whispered, scandalized. She likes it. On the far edge, another couple drifted off rhythm, attention snagged. The man's gaze lingered on Sarah's flushed face. Wish it was me dancing with her, he muttered. His partner snapped her fan closed and slapped him with it, crisp and territorial. Don't.
You dare.
Sarah heard none of it. Lissandra drew her aside, the crowd swirling away as if the universe itself parted for them. At the margin of the dance floor, shadows thickened, lights glinting across Lissandra's skin. Lissandra turned Sarah to face her, slow and deliberate. The music softened, but the pounding of Sarah's heart only grew louder. Lissandra's lips grazed the side of her neck, just above the pulse, fangs pressing lightly, not breaking skin. It was a mark, not a bite. Not a claim of prey, but of possibility. Sarah's knees wobbled. Heat spread through her, dizzy and delicious, as if she'd stepped off solid ground. She clung to Lissandra's sleeve, searching for breath.
You're not feeding on me.
Not in the way you mean. If I wanted to, I would have done it weeks ago. We don't hunt humans or sentient species for food. We can bite for other reasons.
The words rang through Sarah, as if every nerve had tuned to them. She was lightheaded, intoxicated, her thoughts and body both caught in a storm she no longer wanted to escape. Lissandra's hand slid down her arm, threading fingers through Sarah's, guiding her further from the crowd. Sarah let herself be led, legs wobbly, skin prickling, heart hammering loud enough to drown the music. At the ballroom's edge, half in shadow, Lissandra stopped. She turned Sarah gently by the shoulders, close enough that all the glitter and chatter behind them blurred to a distant hush. For a second, they hovered, Sarah's breath shallow, her heart wild. Lissandra's eyes flicked down, seeking permission. Then she closed the space, pressing her lips to Sarah's, cool at first, then growing urgent, hungry, impossibly soft and impossibly sure. Sarah's mind spun. She tasted the strange coolness of Lissandra's mouth, the slightest edge of fong, not drawing blood, but promising more, some deeper thrill. Lissandra's tongue teased at the seam of Sarah's lips, her hand steady at Sarah's jaw, grounding her as the rest of her body threatened to dissolve. The kiss lasted longer than it should have, longer than Sarah could measure. When Lissandra finally broke away, the world came back in pieces, light, noise, air, her own pounding pulse. Lissandra lingered for a breath, forehead nearly touching Sarah's, her thumb brushing Sarah's wrist as she let go.
My room. Later, if you feel like it.
And then she was gone, melting into the crowd with impossible grace. Sarah stood blinking in the shadows, heart pounding, mind foggy with longing and light, the echo of Lissandra's kiss burning on her neck, half invitation, half claim. Around her, the ballroom spun on. But for Sarah, nothing would be the same again. The door to the ballroom swung shut, and the quiet of the corridor hit Sarah like a gentle punch. She walked slow, shoes scuffing metal, left hand pressed absently to her lips, still tingling where Lissandra had kissed her. Her pulse hadn't settled. Neither had her mind. She felt light, unmoored, the station's gravity weaker underfoot. Each step was an echo of the music, a ripple of everything that had just happened, skin still buzzing with Lissandra's last touch. She turned a corner, barely noticing two diplomats passing. They fell silent at the look on her face. In her quarters, Sarah leaned her back against the door, exhaled hard, then pushed trembling fingers through her hair. The room felt too bright. Every surface vibrated with memories, every meeting with Lissandra, every brushed sleeve, every shared silence. How many times had she felt drawn, pulled by something magnetic? How many times had she caught Lissandra's eyes lingering, the air crackling with a want that had no name? She realized now, it hadn't been one-sided. All those quick glances in labs, that strange shiver when Lissandra leaned close over a console, the way her skin prickled when their hands nearly touched, a trail of static, mind brushing mind, weeks before tonight. Tonight, Lissandra had simply dropped the mask. Sarah slid down onto the edge of her bunk, head spinning. The memory of the kiss flared behind her eyes, cool lips, the shape of fangs, the taste of possibility. Was she going crazy? Or was this exactly what it looked like, a vampire who wanted not to feed, but to have her? To touch, to hold, to be close in every possible way? She felt the want spiraling through her body again, bolder now, impossible to hide.
She didn't want to resist.
She never had. A message blinked in her console.
She didn't check it yet.
Sarah just closed her eyes, let the pulse of memory wash over her, and let herself feel wanted, no, claimed, for the first time in longer than she could remember. Her lips curved in a secret smile. If this was madness, she didn't care. She was going to Lissandra's room. Sarah stood in her quarters, dress clinging in one hand, cheeks hot, bare feet on cold metal. She hesitated once, twice, in front of the mirror. The tube dress she chose was thin as a whisper, navy, almost black, hugging every line. She looked at herself, smirked, and left her underwear folded on the bed, pulse ticking higher as she slipped out the door. The walk down the corridor felt longer than it should. She reached Lissandra's quarters and knocked, knuckles soft but intent. Butterflies took flight in her stomach, anticipation and nerves tangled in every breath. The door slid open. Lissandra stood there, framed in shadow and blue-white lamplight. Her nightgown was almost translucent, sliding over her blue-gray skin, showing the gentle contours of hip and breast, the dip of her waist. Her face, always a study in impossible beauty, caught the light, shaded as if painted, eyes gleaming, lips soft. Sarah's gaze wandered, lingered. Lissandra's features looked like luxury, cool, impossibly poised, but alive with something Sarah couldn't name. Lissandra held out a hand and pulled Sarah in, closing the door with a soft hum. She patted the bed beside her, a silent invitation. Sarah sat, shoulders set, decision made, no more waiting, no more hiding. Lissandra's fingers slid into Sarah's, then guided her palm over the swell of her breast, just above the nightgown's edge. The touch was electric, a jolt of memory and loneliness and craving, flashes of empty years passing through Sarah's mind with blinding clarity. It wasn't hunger for blood, but a plea for closeness, for something real and new. Sarah's resolve flared. She grinned, pushed Lissandra gently down onto the soft covers. The dress peeled away, gravity, nerves, decision, all left in a dark heap by the bedside. She pressed herself full length over Lissandra, skin to skin, heat blooming, heart racing. For a moment, she hovered, searching Lissandra's face. The question passed between them, "Do you want this?" Wordless but understood. Lissandra's hand found Sarah's cheek, cool and careful, thumb stroking along her jaw. The answer was written in the way her eyes lingered, the way she tilted her head up into the touch. Sarah let herself explore fingertips, lips, jaw, the hollows of collarbone. Lissandra's body was almost human, but cooler, smoother, her scent strange but intoxicating. Sarah listened with her mouth and hands, memorizing every detail. Lissandra was passive at first, strangely so, until Sarah realized this was trust, not hesitation. When Sarah trailed kisses down, Lissandra gently pressed Sarah's head between her thighs and just held her, trembling slightly, a quiet shiver passing up her body. Time slowed, senses heightened. Sarah could feel the psychic thread between them vibrating, amplifying touch, taste, and need. Lissandra's body stiffened, hips arching, a low sigh escaping, and a series of twitches flowed as Sarah sprawled on top of her, breathless and exhilarated. Decision flared again. Sarah shifted, reached for Lissandra's face, her own skin flushed and damp. She pulled Lissandra close, eyes locked, and whispered the invitation with her body, tilting her neck, heart hammering. "Bite me."
Feed.
Lissandra's gaze sharpened, searching Sarah's eyes for any flicker of doubt. Finding none, she leaned in, fangs grazing skin, then sinking in, gentle, exquisitely careful. There was a sting, then a rush, pleasure and ache and belonging, all tangled together. Sarah wrapped her arms around Lissandra's head, holding her close, rocking softly, letting the moment stretch. Lissandra drank. Sarah saw her color rise, rosy parts flaring on her face. When she withdrew, she pressed her mouth to the mark, sealing it, then collapsed beside Sarah, both of them wrapped in each other, lost in a tangle of limbs and silk. They lay together, skin cooling, bodies still trembling. The silence was deep and easy. Sarah looked at Lissandra, saw the rawness, the gratitude, the shimmer of new possibility in her eyes.
You're not afraid of me anymore.
No, I felt it shift on the dance floor, and now? You're not hunting. You have needs, like I do.
I have found something I never expected, a human who takes precedence. And who gives me pleasure without the drive to take. Your blood, it changes me. Your emotions bloom through me like fire. It's addictive.
Sarah reached out, stroked a thumb across Lissandra's cheek, then leaned in, their foreheads touching. The need, the hunger, the loneliness, they felt it all, shared, mingled, no longer divided by fear or old stories. In the stillness, Sarah smiled. Then let's see where this goes. And in the blue-lit quiet, two pulses beat in time. The station's night drifted in, blue and weightless, washing the room with soft light. Sarah woke to the sensation of being watched, safe, not startled. She blinked, finding Lissandra propped up beside her on one elbow, cool gaze steady, hair spilling in loose ribbons across the sheets. Sarah stretched, spine arching, skin brushing silk. She grinned, then rolled half onto Lissandra, pressing a noisy, unashamed kiss to her lips, loud enough to make them both smile.
If you're hungry, Come closer.
Lissandra's eyes softened, shadows sliding across her cheekbones. She dipped her head, kissing Sarah's jaw, then trailed slow, reverent kisses down to her neck. Her fangs brushed, then broke skin, delicate, with the patience of centuries. This time, Sarah melted into the sensation, heat flaring out from her throat, pleasure blooming through every vein, a pulse that echoed between their bodies. Her fingers tangled in Lissandra's hair, breath stuttering in delight as the world narrowed to mouth, hands, heart. When Lissandra finally drew back, Sarah's body was humming, loose and open, every nerve awake. Lissandra moved over her, taking her time, hands exploring, mouth painting slow paths along Sarah's skin, listening to every gasp and shiver. Lissandra used her fingers, her mouth in ways Sarah had never experienced, centuries of expertise woven into every touch, every kiss. Sarah arched into her, hands sliding over Lissandra's back, surrendering to sensation, letting herself be held, tasted, learned. Pleasure crested, burst, left Sarah twitching in Lissandra's arms, the aftershocks pulsing between them. Lissandra's taller frame curled around her, all arms and quiet strength, stroking Sarah's hair until the shaking slowed. The room felt timeless, just breath, just warmth, the thrum of blood and memory echoing softly through the dark. Safe inside Lissandra's arms, Sarah slipped under again, dozing into the deep blue quiet, heartbeat finally steady, lips curved in the ghost of a smile. Rain shivered against the station dome, streaking glass with cold. Lissandra curled in bed, knees tight, back to the door, sheets in a restless tangle, the room blue-gray and thick with old air. The message had been brief. Don't come. I'm not good company. But Sarah came anyway, boots quiet, jacket shrugged off by the hatch. Lissandra didn't look up. Her shoulders jerked once, then stilled. A flicker of motion, her fingers worrying at the blanket, jaw set, eyes turned away, as if bracing for judgment or worse, concern. Sarah sat at the edge of the bed, weight sinking in, a deliberate intrusion. She let her hand rest on Lissandra's back, gentle, silent. Lissandra flinched, small, then relaxed under the warmth, not quite meeting her eyes.
You don't have to talk. Or move. Just let me in, yeah?
Lissandra exhaled, a shaky, stubborn sound. Her hair spilled messily over the pillow, hiding her face, but her body betrayed her, shoulders easing, breath coming less sharp. Sarah pressed close, arms sliding around her from behind, pulling her into the circle of warmth, skin to skin, heartbeat to heartbeat. She found Lissandra's wrist, traced the cool veins, lifted her hand to her own throat.
I want you to feed. No excuses. You need this. Let me give it. ... Just take what you need. I'll hold you through it.
Lissandra's resistance flickered, eyes squeezed shut, a tremor in her hands. Then, with a careful turn, she nestled closer, lips brushing Sarah's neck, paws hanging between fear and need. The first bite was tentative, almost apologetic, her breath hot, mouth trembling. Sarah cradled her, hand in Lissandra's hair, shushing soft nonsense against her temple. Each pulse brought color back, slow, visible, as if the storm outside was leaking into Lissandra and burning out the pain. When it was done, Lissandra didn't move. She just lay there, face buried in Sarah's shoulder, not feeding anymore but holding tight, breath warming the hollow of Sarah's neck. Sarah rocked her, minute, wordless movements, letting Lissandra be small, for once, in someone else's arms. The storm rattled the dome, but inside, it was only the hush of rain, the drift of skin, and the rhythm of trust given back.
You came anyway.
Of course. I like fixing things that bite.
Lissandra laughed, small but real, a sound Sarah would keep. Together, in the blue-lit hush, they just breathed, need running both ways, and neither one alone. The hush in the room stretched. Lissandra's head stayed tucked under Sarah's jaw, hand still curled at her waist. Her voice came out muffled, words working through resistance.
It was bad today. The news from home, worse than before. Another friend gone. They say it's the fever, but it burns right through the old ones now. People just fade.
Sarah's fingers stilled, then moved again, slow strokes down Lissandra's spine, waiting, making room.
I keep thinking maybe it's the blood. Not ours, not real. The synth the company ships in, it keeps us moving, but something's off. Too many getting sick all at once. Too many like me, who can't bear to take from anyone who thinks, who feels. I've survived decades on that stuff, and now.
Her thumb traced Sarah's jaw, gentle, apologetic. Her next words trembled, half guilt, half gratitude.
Every time I feed from you, it's like waking up from a bad dream. Like I remember how my boat is supposed to work. The ache fades. I'm myself for a while. And I hate needing you for that, but I don't want to stop.
Sarah just held her tighter, no judgment. She let the silence fill in, then tilted Lissandra's face up with a gentle hand.
Then don't. If my blood helps, take it. We'll figure the rest out after. Nobody should have to survive on poison, Liss.
Lissandra's eyes shone in the blue light, haunted and hopeful at once. She nodded, cheeks damp, whether from relief or loss. Sarah didn't ask. She just kissed her temple, and together they listened to the storm ride out, two survivors making a new kind of home. The outpost's lab was dim except for the blue screens and the faint glow from a glass tank of alien algae. Lissandra hunched over the main scope, shoulders drawn tight, eyes flickering over blood samples spinning in the centrifuge. Sarah perched nearby, cradling a mug, watching both Lissandra and the data as if trying to decode their secrets by proximity.
I don't want to say I told you so, but you do look better after feeding. I mean, you glow. Literally. Are you sure you're not photosynthetic?
Lissandra didn't smile, but the corners of her eyes softened. Her hand hovered above a slide.
If only. Maybe then I could live on algae and sun, not. Watch this.
Two samples appeared side by side on the display, Sarah's, bright and vivid, full of shifting living cells, the company's synth, pale, sluggish, a mimic that looked right but moved wrong. The difference was more than color. Sarah's sample fizzed with tiny pulses, a dance the synth couldn't imitate.
That's not subtle. Yours is like club soda. The other one's like flat soy milk. No sparkle. It matches on all the company's metrics, protein, hemoglobin, oxygen binders. But the cells don't behave. No signal, no adaptation. It's just fuel. But it doesn't become anything. It only runs the engine.
Sarah leaned in, the mug forgotten. She reached to adjust the display, comparing the live markers. Lissandra watched her, hunger in her eyes, scientific, not just physical.
So it's like eating soy protein. You get calories, but your body's always asking, what else? She hesitated, searching Lissandra's face. How many years have they been feeding you this?
Lissandra's shoulders slumped. She looked down at her hands, pale against the steel bench.
Decades. Most of us, anyway. It was easier. No more hunting, no more asking permission. Just a ration every week. Now the fever's everywhere, and nobody asks why. The company says, change your filters, increase intake, hydrate.
Sarah watched the screen, then Lissandra. She touched Lissandra's arm. Light grounding.
Let's do what nobody else did. Let's test it. Break it down. Look for what's missing, not just what's present. If the company made a shortcut, maybe it's not enough to live on. Not really.
Lissandra nodded, slow and grave, hope flickering behind the tiredness. She drew Sarah close, forehead to forehead, a silent thank you, as if Sarah's warmth alone could light the whole lab. The screens glowed brighter as the analysis began. 2 women, 2 blood types, and the first honest question anyone had asked in years. Outside, night pressed against the glass, but inside the lab, something new had started to burn. The air in the lab smelled like ozone and spent coffee. Sarah pressed her face to the scope, watching a droplet of blood spin under polarized light. Lissandra hovered, restless, shoulders hunched, fingers drumming on the metal bench.
See here? That's not just cells. Look, see these little particles? Exosomes, microvesicles. It's like a whole ecosystem. My blood is alive. The synth stuff is just blank. No signaling, no microRNA, no immune tags.
The company said it was identical, just red cells, plasma, the basics. But I remember as a child, before we switched, I was stronger. I healed faster. I never got sick.
Sarah swapped slides, sliding a synth sample under the lens. The difference was immediate, flat, almost dead.
You ever hear about colostrum? Human babies, any mammal really, get it in the first milk. It's packed with immune factors, hormones, everything you need to kickstart a body that's never faced the world. Your people, I think you need that. In blood. Not just fuel, actual signals. Information.
We used to call it first draw. The old ones would only take blood from a living host, the first few times, at every change of season. But the company said it was tradition, not science.
Sarah leaned in, placing her hand over Lissandra's. The air felt heavier, charged with the weight of unasked questions.
Tradition is science. Sometimes. At least until you figure out why.
Lissandra's eyes shimmered. Uncertainty, hope, grief, all at war. The machines hummed in the background, processing samples. But here in the blue-white circle of light, they sat, just two bodies, one question.
Then why didn't we see it? Why did nobody measure?
Because the numbers were fine, but nobody tracked the other things. How many of your people get sick? How many heal slow? How many don't thrive? The Forever Company looked for easy answers, and nobody wanted to ask about the rest.
They both stared at the microscope, the small world under glass. One sample dancing with life, the other flat as a forgotten promise.
We fixed this.
Sarah's gloves snapped as she prepped the next samples. Under the lamp, 3 vials sat in a row, her blood, synth, and the off-red from a lab rat called Felix. Lissandra watched, arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller than usual.
Ready for the ultimate insult? Even Felix here is a better donor than your precious company.
She swapped slides, flicking Felix's sample under the scope. The screen glowed, tiny particles, movement, clear structure. Lissandra leaned in, a frown building.
A rat?
Don't take it personally. Mammalian blood is rich in everything. Growth factors, immune bits, microRNA. It's not perfect for you, but it's alive. Your synth blood? It's a nutritional spreadsheet in a bag.
She slid the synth sample under. The monitor showed a desert, flat, no movement, nothing to catch the light.
So the company's best product is less nutritious than rodent soup.
If I ever need to save your life and there's no other choice, I'm grabbing a rat before I grab that bag.
They looked at each other, a bit horrified, a bit amused. Then Sarah cracked a smile, and Lissandra, finally, let out a shaky laugh.
Promise me you'll always tell me the truth, even if it's rat-shaped.
I swear. Even if it makes you want to bite me twice. We tell them, we save as many as we can.
The table was small, set for 2. Sarah had gone all in. Real steak, roasted marrow bones, bowls of bright vegetables she knew Lissandra would ignore, and, beside the wine glass, a heavy, clinical bag of O-negative suspended in crystal. The blood was ruby, gleaming. Lissandra watched the drop form on the rim, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Sarah poured herself wine, the glass catching lamplight in red flickers. She carved her steak, glancing up, catching Lissandra's hesitation as she picked up the blood glass.
Go on! I made it special! Carnivore solidarity, right? I eat starches when I have to, not because I like them.
Lissandra's lips twitched. She watched Sarah cut a thick, pink slice, juices seeping, glistening on the plate.
Watch. She holds up the piece of meat, squeezes it gently, red liquid beads between her fingers. Blood in here too. I eat it every day. Nobody calls me a monster.
Lissandra picked up her glass at last, gaze flicking to Sarah. She hesitated, then drank, slow, controlled, as if someone might judge her for enjoying it.
Isn't it? Isn't it frightening, watching me do this? Or when I feed on you?
Not frightening. Pleasurable, honestly, and practical. She taps her own glass, then the steak. What's so different, really?
Lissandra's hand found Sarah's across the table, cool, gentle, not trembling. She squeezed, then bowed her head, hair falling over her eyes.
You don't see the monster I do.
Sarah's thumb traced slow circles on Lissandra's knuckles, grounding her, refusing to flinch. The lamplight painted them both in shades of red and gold. Outside, the station night pressed close, but inside the table felt like the safest place in the world. The silence stretched, not awkward, thick, close. Lissandra looked down, picked up her fork, and cut a piece of steak. She brought it to her lips, pausing just before biting. Sarah watched, chin in hand, eyes bright. Lissandra chewed slowly, as if testing every flavor. Her face softened, surprise flickering in her eyes, pleasure, or maybe memory. She swallowed, then tried another bite, letting the juices linger.
See? It's not just for humans. She grins, raising her glass in salute. We're both opportunists, really.
Lissandra smiled, almost shy, a lock of hair falling across her cheek. She reached for the marrow bone, scooping a little onto her plate. The hunger in her eyes had softened, less edge, more invitation.
It's different. Blood is immediate. But this, she licks her lips, searching for the word it reminds me of before. Before synth. Before we forgot what real food felt like.
They ate in gentle silence, knives tapping, sharing glances. With every bite, Lissandra seemed less alone, more present, more herself. When the plates were mostly empty, Sarah leaned forward, voice low, threading a question into the candlelit hush.
You're quieter tonight. She reaches, brushing Lissandra's wrist with her fingers. Want to talk or just sit with it?
Lissandra glanced up, fork pausing midair. Her jaw worked, hesitant, old reflex to hide, to mask, flickering behind her eyes.
I had a message from home. Things are worse. Another friend gone. Disease. We all thought it was under control. That synth blood would keep us stable, keep the weak alive. But it's not enough. Maybe it never was. Every time I feed from you, I feel. Her fingers curl on the table, not quite trembling. Stronger. Clearer. Like waking up from a long, gray dream. But if I say that aloud, I'm a heretic or a criminal. The company says synth is equivalent, that it's safe. But my body knows better. My friends are dying and I can't fix it. I can't save anyone, not even myself.
Sarah moved closer, pulling her chair alongside, shoulder pressed to Lissandra's. No big words, just presence. She squeezed Lissandra's hand, thumb circling, letting the grief rise and settle between them.
Then don't hide. Feed, if it helps. Be here. You don't have to save anyone tonight.
Lissandra nodded, lips pressed tight, her head bowed, hair shadowing her face, but her hand stayed curled in Sarah's, anchored, if only for now. The table was a mess, half kitchen, half clinic. Candlelight played across plates of rare meat, a scattering of blue enzyme capsules, a centrifuge whirring softly on the shelf, and glass vials tinted every shade of red. Sarah poured a tiny beaker of hemoglobin concentrate, then topped her own glass with wine, nudging it toward Lissandra. Their fingers brushed, and the touch lingered. Lissandra eyed the little blue capsule with suspicion. She rolled it between thumb and finger, science disguised as medicine, or maybe the other way around.
Come on. Worst case, you spit it out and I get to say I told you so.
Lissandra popped the capsule, chased it with a forkful of meat. She chewed, slow, careful. Sarah leaned forward, elbows on the table, watching every twitch.
That is not awful. Actually. She takes another bite, eyes lighting. That's better than I remember. There's flavor, not just texture.
Sarah broke into a grin, snatching a tablet and scribbling notes with her fingertip.
Next trial, hemoglobin plus enzyme, no sauce. We're going full chef scientist here. Just don't explode, okay?
Lissandra's laugh was genuine, unguarded. She tried the hemoglobin next slowly, then in a quick, decisive swallow. She shuddered, but not in pain.
It's close. My body says real, but there's a missing note. Like when music skips a beat, but you still want to dance.
They tasted, traded notes, pushing plates and vials back and forth. Every reaction was logged, but Sarah kept sneaking glances, watching Lissandra's color change, the tension draining from her shoulders as the food, real food, settled in.
Maybe the missing piece isn't in a vial. Maybe it's just sharing it. Eating at the same table.
Lissandra set her fork down. She reached for Sarah's hand, voice soft, fingers cool.
I haven't felt this alive in years. I want to remember every bite, every laugh. She smiles, almost shy. Thank you for not letting me fade.
The rest of dinner slipped by in slow, warm waves, shared glances, new flavors, small, bright triumphs. In a world built on substitutions, they'd tasted something real. The vial trembled slightly in Sarah's hand, not from fear, but the weight of what it held. A blend of her own flora, carefully cultured from her saliva, gut, and blood. Alive, complex, ancient. Lissandra sat on the bench beside her, hair tied back, skin flushed faintly blue. She hadn't fed in days, waiting for this.
This is what made me, me. I don't just want to feed you. I want to repopulate you.
Lissandra blinked, lips parting, a soundless gasp or prayer. She reached for the vial, but Sarah caught her hand.
Not like that. I want you to taste it from me. Everything I am, everything you've forgotten, I want to give it back.
She kissed her, softly, open-mouthed, letting the mixture pass between them in warmth and breath and life. It wasn't erotic. It wasn't clinical. It was reclamation. Lissandra swallowed, her hands trembling. Somewhere inside, something woke. A stirring, a twitch, a memory resparking in her gut. For the first time in decades, her body remembered how to receive. The blue spill of station night washed the bed in faint light, tracing both bodies in shadow and silver. Sarah's knees pressed into the mattress, slow and sure, as she leaned over Lissandra, hair falling forward, mouth close, breath warm against her belly. Lissandra's hands flexed at her sides, fingers curling, uncurling. Her chest rose and fell in deep, uncertain waves. Sarah kissed her way down, patient, lips tracing the faint lines of muscle, the dip of hip, pausing at every shift, every held breath. She paused, looking up. Waiting, asking without words. Lissandra's eyes met hers, wide, pupils huge in the dark. A nod, barely more than a tremor of chin. Sarah smiled, then pressed a kiss low, just above the place where hunger sparked hottest. Her hands slid under Lissandra's thighs, spreading her gently. No force, just invitation. She lowered her mouth, tongue flicking, tasting. Lissandra gasped, shoulders arching off the bed, one hand flying to grip Sarah's hair, the other pressing flat to the wall. Sarah moved slow, attentive, every lick, every circle, every sudden pause tuned to the twitch of Lissandra's hips and the way her breath hitched, broke, then rebuilt. She listened with her mouth, lips parted, tongue soft, learning the shape of want. Lissandra's thighs tensed, then trembled. Her body arched higher, breath catching, a low moan blooming in her throat. Sarah's hands anchored her, one palm on her hip, the other sliding up to lace their fingers together, grounding her as the tremors built. The room blurred to skin, heat, and small helpless sounds. When Lissandra finally came with a loud shout, her back arched, head thrown back, mouth wide in silent cry. Sarah held her, rode the shutters, never letting go. After, Lissandra collapsed back, breath shaky, eyes glazed and glowing in the blue light. Sarah eased up beside her, brushing hair from her damp forehead, lips soft at her temple.
I didn't know it could feel like that. You make me want Sarah, not just feed.
Sarah wrapped her arms around her, pulling her close. Lissandra's whole body still pulsed with aftershocks, but now she clung to Sarah, grounding herself in warmth, safety, and the promise of being wanted for more than blood. In the hush, the station's hum faded behind the sound of their breathing, tangled, content, alive. Lissandra rolled onto her side, eyes hungry, not for blood, but for Sarah. With a slow, sure motion, she caught Sarah's wrist, guiding her up and over, moving her as easily as a pillow. Here, Lissandra murmured, voice low, strong. Sit. Sarah giggled, nervous and delighted. But Lissandra's arms were a cage of velvet steel. She tugged, and Sarah found herself straddling Lissandra's chest, knees on either side, heat pooling, nowhere to run.
No escaping now.
Sarah tried to protest, a squirming laugh. But then Lissandra's hands gripped her thighs. She moved down a little, holding her steady, and her mouth, cool, deft, found its target. All at once, the world narrowed to touch. Sarah's hands clutched at Lissandra's shoulders, breath coming fast, every motion, every flick, every squeeze amplified, every escape cut off by the weight of arms and need. Lissandra worked with unhurried confidence, relentless as tide, drawing Sarah down, opening her wider, tasting every shudder, every gasp. It didn't take long. Sarah's giggles turned to breathless, pleading moans, hips rolling, toes curling, body desperate and alive. When Lissandra tightened her grip and intensified her efforts, Sarah shrieked, sound bursting out, hands fisting in the sheets, world upended. Lissandra didn't let go, not yet, keeping Sarah close, working her through every aftershock, only letting her collapse when the tremors faded. For a long moment, Sarah lay draped over Lissandra, eyes closed, chest heaving, the world still spinning. When she finally looked up, Lissandra's mouth was glossy, cheeks streaked, her smile wicked and full of pride. Sarah tried to look away. Lissandra caught her chin, kissed her, and left no room for shame.
Feed.
I love you, I think, Sarah murmured. After a long, silent moment, Lissandra pressed her lips to Sarah's temple, breathing her in. She shifted, gathering Sarah close, one arm strong around her waist. Sarah tipped her head, neck bared, not out of duty, but open invitation. Lissandra's hand traced Sarah's jaw, slow and deliberate. She pressed a kiss just below the ear, then another at the pulse, soft, lingering, promising safety. When her fangs slid in, it was almost invisible, no shock, only warmth and yielding. Sarah exhaled, breath fluttering, body relaxing against Lissandra's chest as the pull began. Blood flowed, but so did something deeper. Sarah's hand curled in Lissandra's hair, anchoring them together, the line between pleasure and hunger gone. The rhythm was gentle, measured, sacred. Lissandra drank only what she needed, then drew back, licking the mark closed, pressing her forehead to Sarah's as their heartbeats synced, slow, steady, shared. They held each other, the night outside forgotten, both changed in ways words could never name.